Have you been looking at all these cool depth swarms and wondering how you could get your hands on your very own? Well, look no further because this is going to be a quick guide to help you becoming a conqueror. So you want to complete a Grandmaster. Let's talk about what separates Grandmasters from the rest of the game and why they are my favorite thing in Destiny. Difficulty. Yeah, you heard me right. Grandmasters are the hardest activities in Destiny ever created. Now there are a couple reasons for this. Actually 12, because there are 12 modifiers within every Grandmaster. Yep, you heard me right. That's 12 modifiers, and trust me, they hurt. But don't fret, there are many ways to play towards them. So the first thing you need to do to even think about doing GMs is get up to the Pinnacle cap plus 15. So this season, the Pinnacle cap is 1310, and a plus 15 would require you to be at least 1325 to start the GMs this season. This is the entry requirement in order to start a GM. Personally, I don't agree with this artificial requirement, but with the changes coming to Pinnacle Power Chase each season, should help drastically with this. Once you are Pinnacle plus 15, you are now able to actually load into a GM. The next thing you need to do is look at the specific strike you are trying to do, and figure out what shields are going to be present in that strike. Because of match game and extra shields being a modifier in all GMs, you're going to heavily concentrate on this aspect of that strike. With your team, make sure to cover all the elements you will need. In many cases, you will need all 3 elements, but in some cases, you'll only need 2, and very, very few cases, you might only need 1. I would highly recommend to never just bring 1 element. And now for the most important part about completing a GM, your armor mods. This is the aspect of Destiny that isn't really emphasized elsewhere in the game, so be mindful of what mods you are using. Because of how mods work, you really don't need to worry about what exotics or subclass you're using. I can guarantee most subclasses, if not all, can be made to work well in a GM. I'm so confident in this that I will do any weird build, as long as it's for a Warlock, because that's the only class I can do GMs on currently, that you leave in the comments below. I will run through a GM with that build and complete it and make a video and show that you can do any playstyle you wish. If you have fun playing a certain way, don't feel the need to do what others say. Just play to your advantages. There are a couple mandatory mods you'll need to take. First up, the damage resist mods. You can use 2 damage resist mods at any time in the second and third chest piece mod slots. Each mod gives a 25% damage resist mod for its type of damage received. When you stack 2 of the same, you instead have a 40% damage resist. So what I would recommend is to never double up on the same damage resist mod, because you can reach a 50% resist if done correctly, which is 10% more than 40%. The best way, in my opinion, is to take 1 weapon type resist and 1 ranged resist. I consider the melee and sniper resist as the ranged resist mods, so you'd want to bring one of those, while the elemental and concussive resist mods are what I call weapon type resists. With this combination, you cover a more broad damage resist so you can survive in more broad environments. These are mandatory, do not use weapon reserves. The damage mitigation is not worth giving up. This is the only place you can get this type of damage resist because you cannot slot these on other pieces of armor. I'm not saying this is mandatory in the sense that you cannot literally start it. I'm saying that the benefit that you're getting from these is too good to pass up. Before the armor change mods were made with Beyond Light, Grandmasters, snipers, and melee enemies would one-shot you. But now if you use melee resist or sniper resist, those enemies no longer one-shot you. And that's the sort of thing that has made Grandmasters much better to use. And that's why I would say that these are quote-unquote mandatory. I personally will not do a GM unless I have these equipped. So for me, they are mandatory, and that's what I would highly recommend using. While we're here, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button. Anti-champion mods. These are the second set of mandatory mods that I would say you need, because there's a ton of champions, and that's the whole thing about Grandmasters, is killing all the champions. So, killing champions without the anti-champion mod is very, very difficult, and sometimes nigh impossible in a Grandmaster. These can only go on your second or third mod slot in your gloves. These mods change from season to season, so make sure to check the artifact each season to stay up to date with what weapons you can use and what anti-champion mods go on what weapon. Regardless of what mods are actually available each season, these are going to be necessary. My rule of thumb is that there should be at least 2 anti-champion weapons available in the squad, spread through the entire team. You don't want to run into a situation where your only overload weapon is on the player who is dead, and you ending up having to kill an overload champion. It's just not good, and it's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to kill it. They heal too much, too quickly. You're not going to be able to stun it if you don't have those overload weapon or abilities. If there are mods that give anti-champion effects, make sure to take advantage of these. So stuff like Void Grenades cause overload, or Solar Grenades cause disruption. Stuff like that. You want to pay attention to those. They typically go in your class armor slot, so make sure you check the artifact. But as I said, this section is very, very dependent on the artifact mod. Obviously, if you didn't want to have to rely on the seasonal anti-champion mods for your weapons, you could always use a few of the exotics that have the intrinsic anti-champion effects. For example, Leviathan's Breath, Devil's Rune, Ariana's Vow, Lament, and Divinity. These are very good options to bring instead of using a seasonal anti-champion effect mod. Now moving on to the more interesting part about mods with armor. The build mods. For example, Charged with Light, Warmind Cells, and Elemental Wells. Where and when to use them. Charged with Light builds typically play around benefiting yourself and only yourself. Warmind Cells benefit your entire team but restrict your loadout significantly. However, this requires all players to commit their build to Warmind Cells to actually take advantage of. And for the new mods introduced this season, Elemental Wells. Elemental Wells play around being extremely passive but will always affect all players if they pick up the Wells. Elemental Wells are not as strong as Charged with Light or Warmind Cells, but they offer ease of use and players do not have to fully commit to their build to make use of them like Warmind Cells. To put it short, Charged with Light are good everywhere but only affect the individual, Warmind Cells are good in high density strikes but require a high commitment, Elemental Wells give a very low benefit, improve vastly when all players use the same subclass element, but require almost no build commitment. Moving on to the last topic, gameplay. These are little tips and tricks to help you clear your first GM. In GMs, your greatest strength are your allies. When a player goes down, things get much harder, but be prepared to clutch up on your team or you're going to go back to orbit. There are no checkpoints here, you either succeed or fail. Don't do stupid stuff, don't ape at enemies, this isn't Trials. Wait until you have your shields back, and then go out. To kill barrier champion, you either need stasis or anti-barrier weapons. Don't waste your ammo unless you can use one of those things. You need overload weapon to deal with overload champs. Period. Stasis resets their cooldown, which means they will constantly heal. However, stasis can be a good tool to simply freeze them and move to a better position to maybe revive an ally, or just get into a better spot to shoot them from. Unstoppable champions do not heal, or stop. They can be killed without an unstoppable weapon, however it's going to take a while if you don't use unstop mods. Enemies will shoot AoE around walls if they can damage you. Pay attention to audio cues. Your radar is disabled, open your ears people, listen for the thralls. Mods that affect shields are much stronger, and GMs do to match game. Use Disruption Break, Genesis, and Shield Disorient. Ads are not easy to kill. Always prioritize ads, they will overwhelm you. Champions are easier to deal with by themselves. Crouch if you're in the front, don't block your teammates' shots. For the love of God, do not use double primaries. There is no reason to use double primaries ever, anywhere, ever. There are 3 people. You can deal with the champions. If you like the video, a thumbs up is appreciated. If you want to see more content that I put out, hit the subscribe button with the bell notification turned on. And as always, thanks for watching and have a good day.